Hi, I'm here today to talk about the merger between AOL and Time Warner, why it failed and what could have been done differently. So, in 2001, the Internet Organisation of American Online, which is known as AOL, and the media conglomerate called Time Warner, came together for a merger worth $165 billion, and this was deemed as the biggest merger in American history. So together, these two organisations had a combined value of $350 billion. But the failure of this merger saw a $99 billion loss for the two companies. So firstly, I just want to talk about why the two organisations came together for this merger. So this all happened in a time period where the dot-com bubble existed. So this is where the internet grew and there was massive expectations around the growth and it was going to make lots of money. So Time Warner tried to create an online presence, but they did fail. So they were wanting to go to someone that already had an online presence and they needed to go somewhere else to find this. So AOL had an online presence and that meant that their shares were large at this time because it was during the dot-com bubble. So this was the starting premise for their partnership. Then in 2002, the bubble burst and everyone lost money and there were lots of companies that had to shut down because of it. This is one of the influences of the failure of the partnership, but there are several other reasonings behind this failure, and that's what I'm going to discuss today. So, the first point that I'm going to talk about is the culture between AOL and Time Warner. So, the boardroom and the cultural differences between the two organisations meant that the companies never truly merged or integrated together because they were too different at this level. It only saw a merger between the superficial level of the company. So this meaning that on the outside, you saw a merger between the two companies, but on the inside and at the core of the companies, there was no merger. So AOL were deemed to be quite an aggressive and arrogant company, whereas Time Warner were more described to be unadventurous but more corporate in comparison. So having such different cultures like the ones that have just been described does make it hard to merge together because they are completely different, and this added to the failure because the companies were too different to come together. So the second point that I'm going to talk about now is the multiple disagreements at management level and how the management level was so unstable, resulting to a failure in the merger. So as I said before, it was a very unstable management structure. Both companies were having feuds over who was going to take the top executive position. Over a 3-year period, they had 4 different CFOs. And also the CEO of Time Warner resigned only a year after the merger started. The management level is one that is really important in a merger. They set a precedent of how the merger is going to follow. Having an unstable management level sees unstableness through the rest of the organisations. Therefore, this is another point that adds to the failure of the two organisations coming together in the merger. The third point that I'm going to talk about is the lack of planning and execution behind this merger. So, the executives and the employees of the two companies heavily resented each other and were not going along with the plans that were put in place. There were many plans for strategies to be integrated into the merger, but these were not executed well. They were resented by employees and they weren't put in place, and therefore this eventually resulted in a failure between the two mergers because these plans were not put in place, and hence the failure between the two organisations. So just to conclude on what we've been over today, we've seen that there's many points that can add to the failure or the success of a merger between two organisations. We've looked at AOL and Time Warner, which saw failure in their merger. This was because of cultural clashes, unstable management, and the lack of execution behind the plans that they've put in place. At the end of the day, this resulted in a failure of the merger, which lost a lot of money for both organisations and a lot of respect. So these are points that could make a merger extremely successful, but in this case, it resulted in a failure.